I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics. Messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for September the 4th, 2025. We actually do have a considerable amount of news to go through later on. Of course, we are reminded, number one, pray for peace, Israel, Gaza, the Middle East. Number two, pray for peace, Russia and Ukraine. And then number three, we have to be especially lifting up things here on the American home front before the Lord, as matters are definitely getting more and more interesting. Now, we have the fall high holidays coming up at the end of the month. And with that, every year, speculation about prophetic events goes up. A lot of teachings go out. And indeed, I heard something recently, didn't exclusively deal with this subject matter for today, but it prompted that, we need to have an episode where we discuss the Song of Songs, more commonly known in some circles as the Song of Solomon, but the Hebrew is Shir HaShirim, which is Song of Songs. All right, so if you do not have a copy already in your personal or congregational library, I highly recommend you get this resource, a survey of the Holy Scriptures for the Practical Messianic, outreachisraelbookstore.com, also available in paperback and ebook. This is the combined volume we released last year of our Survey of the Tanakh and Survey of the Apostolic Scriptures workbook. So this is a combined volume. It's effectively a Bible survey workbook, which gives you a messianic introduction to every book of the Bible, but does not shy away from the critical tradition. It doesn't shy away from some of the things which different liberal examiners, not only Christian, but also Jewish, have said. It would adhere to what would be best described as a small c conservative approach, but not hopelessly so. So today we're going to review the Song of Songs. Let me switch windows really quickly. All right, there we go. The entry on Song of Songs in a survey of the Holy Scriptures. So should you choose to go through this study yourself, it is recommended that, number one, you read the text, in this case, the Song of Songs, in a single sitting. You have some kind of note paper or journal, a notebook handy. Read through the Song of Songs, keeping a journal log of people, places, key themes and events, and major scripture passages. Doing a survey of the Bible at one point in your life is probably one of the most valuable things you will ever do. I had to, at Asbury Seminary, all the way back in the spring of 2006, we had to do precisely this. I took an online course, Survey of the Bible. Sit down, read Genesis in a single sitting, and in your journal, people, places, key ideas, concepts, questions, and observations you have. And indeed, if we all did that, we'd be a lot further along in not only our comprehension of the word, but in our theology and in our ability to sort through different matters. And if you use a good study Bible, you'll be informed about, at least in broad strokes, how different texts of Holy Scripture have been approached in Jewish history, Christian history, different authorship controversies, different reliability controversies, etc. And indeed, with a text like Song of Songs, there are definitely some controversies. All right, so our theological summary of the Song of Songs. Approximate date, 900s BCE, right? Some conservative moderate. 700s to 600s BCE, some conservative moderate. 500s to 300s BCE, the left. The purpose, to speak of the love of a bridegroom and bride. The author, Solomon, or a patron directed by him, right? Some conservative moderate, or anonymous, some conservative moderate, and those on the left. The location of the author, land of Israel or Jerusalem, right? Conservative moderate. Land of Israel, Jerusalem, and or Babylon or Persia, left. Yeah. And finally, the target audience and their location. People of Israel, later people of Judah, right? Conservative moderate. Southern kingdom, returning or returned from Babylon, the left. Okay, so those of you who are unfamiliar with this style have already seen at least an indication that there's a wide variance of approaches to how at least a text like Song of Songs was composed. Not holding back that there's a left-leaning perspective out there. All right. The correct Hebrew title of this book of the Tanakh is Shir HaShirim, or Song of Songs. Yes, it is more commonly called the Song of Solomon, but the Hebrew text is Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. Well, many are agreed that Solomon is somehow related to this song. Song of Songs is the more correct title. Song of Songs is placed among the Megillot in Jewish tradition, commonly being read during seasons such as Passover or Sukkot. Heard about it just the other day in reference to the fall high holidays. In Roman Catholic tradition, this book is commonly referred to as Canticles, derived from the Latin Vulgate's rendering of Shir HaShirim as Canticum Canticorum. Song of Songs 1 ascribes authorship to Solomon by name, and he is referred to frequently throughout the text. Song of Songs 1, 1, 5, 3, 7, 9, 11, 8, 11, and 12, with other verses making reference to the king. Song of Songs 1, 4, 12, 7, 5. Whether Solomon was the actual author or composer of Song of Songs has been debated, as some Jewish tradition ascribes authorship to the men of Hezekiah. Talmud Bava Batra 15a. In favor of Solomonic involvement are references to places throughout the text which were a part of Solomon's kingdom. Conservatives generally accept Solomonic authorship or some kind of Solomonic involvement, as Solomon is attested as having been responsible for 1,005 songs, 1 Kings 4:32. Yes, I do wear glasses. Critical scholars tend to date Song of Songs to the Persian period and widely consider it to be a post-exilic work, possibly composed as late as 250 BCE. They often assert that Song of Songs is a selection of poems joined together, and any kind of perceived unity in the text is likely the result of considerable redaction. This is often done so because of the usage of Persian words in Song of Songs, as well as a single Greek term in its Hebrew text, causing liberals to conclude that the book must be from a later period. Conservatives usually respond to this by saying that Solomon had interactions with other cultures. Song of Songs 1:9, also 1 Kings 4:31-33, with a few suggesting that the foreign loan words are from much earlier and are actually Sanskrit. Dating Song of Songs to the 10th century BCE, contemporary to the reign of Solomon, is not impossible. The distinct references to Tirzah and Jerusalem places the text, or at least a proto-text, sometime before King Omri, 1 Kings 16, 23, and 24. It is notable that not all conservatives are convinced of a 10th century BCE composition for Song of Songs because of the amount of loan words used in the book. Some conservatives advocate that the text reached its final form during the Hellenistic era. Ultimately, however, no one can know with certainty the date for Song of Songs, similar to how no one can know the exact date for all of the Psalms. No significant controversy has ever surrounded Song of Songs' canonical status, as it has been widely valued in Jewish tradition. Mishnah Yada Yaim 3:5. In fact, fragments of Song of Songs were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, indicating that the Qumran community had some kind of regard for it. Interpreting Song of Songs properly has been an interesting phenomenon in theology over the centuries. This is the main reason why we're having this discussion today. Today, scholars expel a great deal of time comparing Song of Songs to other forms of biblical composition, notably the wisdom books and apocryphal genres. Likewise, Proverbs is frequently examined to gain insight for Song of Songs' more difficult sayings. Other literature which is often consulted includes Egyptian and Babylonian love songs. The contemporary debate surrounding Song of Songs primarily concerns its original literary type and function. Historically, both the Jewish and Christian traditions have allegorized the Song of Songs. Quote, "There is extraordinary agreement between both Jewish and Christian tradition on this point," unquote. Anchor Bible Dictionary. Some have suggested that this tendency came as the direct result of Hellenistic influence on both the synagogue and the church, with views of the body being sinful. Any reference to lovers was concluded to not have been the original intent of Song of Songs, so instead, the synagogue widely considered it to be a love story between God and Israel. The Targum on Song of Songs followed suit, interpreting the text allegorically, with it generally being followed as such in various celebratory fashions. Song of Songs was used by the Zionist movement, for example, to consider the paradise of Zion. Christian tradition has followed suit and has widely interpreted Song of Songs as representing a love story between Christ and the church. It is speculated that this view of Song of Songs was introduced after the book was accepted in the biblical canon. More likely, Song of Songs played a more prominent role in ancient Israel's culture and had less spiritual ideas in mind than were attributed later. Now, this is where things get interesting. More modern interpretations of Song of Songs lean toward the book being some kind of love story involving Solomon and one of his wives, or more literally, the maiden for her shepherd lover resisting the appeal of Solomon. Some are undecided as to what the involvement of Solomon or the woman actually was, thinking that interpreters should not force some kind of story onto the text and simply view it as love poetry. Theologically speaking, Song of Songs hardly affects any major biblical doctrines, but it does profoundly affect how one looks at human sexuality. A great deal of teachers today, both Jewish and Christian, wishing to rejuvenate a healthy view of sex from the Bible, give significant attention to Song of Songs. A consensus of interpreters agree, quote, that the Song of Songs has to do with human love in the literal historical sense, unquote. Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible Supplement. They point out that the ancient Hebrews demonstrated a high degree of sexual morality compared to their neighbors. God certainly wants to restore a healthy and meaningful sex life to all his people, where one can explore the joys which he intended a heterosexual couple to have. The text of Song of Songs is somewhat provocative from this vantage point, as it is erotic with its references to various anatomical parts. Song of Songs 4, 1 through 7, 5, 10 through 16, 6, 4 through 10, 7, 1 through 9. Song of Songs asks couples today many questions which those of previous eras, particularly the Victorian era, did not want to answer. Young people preparing to marry can often now be encouraged to closely consider Song of Songs. Your average Messianic teacher often does not examine the intricacies of Song of Songs. Those who have taken the time to do so will often avoid the references to sexuality and focus on more traditional allegorical interpretations. It is difficult for many in our ranks to break out of the 19th century Victorianism, often because issues like sexuality are not able to be easily discussed. Song of Songs should certainly be a text examined in more detail for Messianic people who want a sound handle on sexuality and what is acceptable for married persons having intercourse. But even if read figuratively, Song of Songs should cause one to have more intimacy with God. And indeed, if a person takes Song of Songs more in the direction of it being some kind of literal love poetry, intimacy, intercourse, what a married couple does is their business. But, and this is my experience, your experience might be completely different. The way I have often heard Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, but Song of Songs frequently referred to in my Messianic encounters over the years has been along the lines of a love story between God and Israel. It's been allegorized. Some of you all may have a copy of the Art Scroll Tanakh in your libraries. That is an Orthodox Jewish translation of the Tanakh. It reads similarly, although not exactly, it reads similarly to a New American Standard, although it has a lot of Hebrew / Ashkenazic terms in it. You look at the Song of Songs, while other texts of the Tanakh are what would be called functional equivalents, so literal but not hopelessly so, like a New American Standard would be. Song of Songs follows an allegorized approach. It's not as literal as you would want it to be. But this is an interesting thing, which I know a lot of us are going to have to consider. Song of Songs is one of these texts. The fall high holidays come up. It's referred to frequently in an allegorized way, yet the pendulum has definitely shifted in the exact opposite direction over the past half century or so, with it being viewed as erotic love poetry. I'll just call it out. Again, and how people take that, how married couples take that, that's their business. Yeah, that's what happens when you begin to consider the original genre of a biblical text. All right, so hope you all got a few things out of that. Once again, this has been taken from our ministry publication, A Survey of the Holy Scriptures for the Practical Messianic. And just fast forwarding over the next few months or so, there are going to be some texts, of course, which people consider traditionally during the fall high holidays. So I've already listed, we need to go through Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes has got a lot of question marks associated with it. Likewise, when we begin a new Torah cycle, it would be my intention to cover the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy entries as those texts open up in the new Torah cycle. Those are just some things I've jotted down. Fast forwarding over the next few months, we'll probably be able to do it. But of course, everything's subject to change, as we know. And with that in mind, things being subject to change, let's get into some news. Now, we do the news roundup after the theology roundup because the news changes from day to day. Everything is time sensitive. But once again, number one, pray for peace. Israel, Gaza, the Middle East. Yes, the return of the hostages, but no more killing. Number 2, pray for peace, Russia and Ukraine. No more killing. And number 3, pray for a degree of sanity, a degree of, continence as we see different things unfold in the coming weeks and months here on the American home front. Pray for peace in the world. There are a lot of things going on right now. A wide number of our news events. Of course, we're still trying to sort through the big giant parade which took place in Beijing, obviously commemorating the end of the Second World War in the Pacific Front for the Chinese. But Xi Jinping had Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un there, the president of Iran, and various others. What does that signal? Today, there was a summit held at the Élysée Palace in Paris, hosted by President Macron with different European and NATO leaders. Steve Witkoff was there as the U.S. envoy. President Trump was apparently, rooted in. He attended virtually. And there's some other things as well as they involve Israel, Gaza. So we got a lot to go through here. All the news stories I'm about to go through, these are things I tend to encounter passively on social media, mainly X, Instagram. Once in a while, you all will direct message me something. All of the links will be available for you to look through later today when this episode is archived at MessianicApologetics.net. Okay, our first story. This is from yesterday, Visegrad 24, on September the 3rd. This is when Trump was hosting the president of Poland at the Oval Office. I have no message to President Putin. He knows where I stand, and he'll make a decision one way or the other. Whatever his decision is, we'll either be happy about it or unhappy. And if we're unhappy about it, you'll see things happen. Yeah, and we do monitor things which are, at least a little dated, so we can trace the unfolding of events. Because when you are able to trace the unfolding of events, whether it's what led up to what is now being called the 12-Day War, Israel, Iran, then the U.S. involvement, what we're seeing here, hopefully with some kind of peace agreement, Russia and Ukraine, we need to trace those events so we can stay calm and grounded. Because too many people we know, especially with the fall high holidays coming up, they are not calm and grounded. They're actually, I mean this with all the love and respect in the world, they're afraid. They're anxious. They're even a little, they've got a phobia of some kind. And many of their leaders don't know what to do. So we're trying to step in and help people remain calm and people remain stabilized. Okay, also from this same meeting at the Oval Office, this is more in the American home front. Rapid Response 47, there's a 1-minute clip, 1 minute, 9 seconds. From POTUS, we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago or do we go to a place like New Orleans, where we have a great governor, Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten it out? Okay, so there's, of course, a lot of talk, a lot of speculation. Donald Trump bringing in the National Guard, trying to clean up crime in a place like the District of Columbia. Where might he go next? Would he do multiple cities at once? These, like Chicago is a very significantly crime-ridden city. Does he go to New Orleans? Does he go to New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles? And of course, a lot of people, certainly on the political left, tie that into, well, Trump wants to become a dictator. Others, more on the prophecy side, might say, Trump is consolidating power. He's doing this. Is this going to give rise to the beast, to the New World Order? Is Trump the beast? So these are the kinds of things people can draw conclusions from when they see this. Okay, so to what took place recently. Yeah. to what took place recently with the big giant parade in Beijing from open source intel updates. Putin said that if peace talks with Ukraine fail, Russia will resolve it by military means. And there's a 13-second clip there. So this is why we should all at least be praying for peace between Russia and Ukraine. You know, we don't need to be reminded time and time again that Russia is the world's largest nuclear power. You don't want to pick a fight with Russia, especially now that Russia is aligned with the East, whether we like that or not. From Visegrad 24, likewise at the 27-second clip there, the meeting at the Oval Office with the Polish president, Trump says that Xi should have acknowledged the U.S. in his speech at the military parade in Beijing last night in connection with the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Trump says that the U.S. was instrumental in helping China to regain its freedom. And without, of course, acknowledging the U.S. and the role that the Allies played in helping to defeat Japan, liberate China, that's kind of a statement that, well, China's now the center of global attention, no longer the old European and North American powers. From Visegrad 24, this is yesterday, September the 3rd, breaking. Putin says he's willing to meet with Zelensky if Zelensky agrees to come to Moscow. Okay. And I'm sure many of us, and you don't have to be some kind of an analyst, you don't have to be an intelligence, you don't have to have a degree in political science to recognize that that's probably not going to happen. But you never know. Okay, to the American home front from Fox News on X. Breaking. Epstein victim's lawyer says you're going to be appalled by documents hidden by protective orders, confidentiality agreements, and bank secrecy laws as lawmakers push discharge position. What is going to happen here on the American home front in the coming weeks and months with things like the Epstein files? We already know 30,000 files have been released. Of course, we also got Russiagate. We also got other things which are, circulating. It's not going to end up well, regardless of if you're on the political right, the political left. Who doesn't have some skeleton in their proverbial closet, right? Okay, from open source intel, Israel and the Middle East. New. 2 Israeli officials claim U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has signaled in private meetings that he doesn't oppose West Bank, Judea and Samaria annexations, and that the Trump administration won't stand in the way, per Axios. So here, of course, this is information which can change day to day. You don't know if Israel saying that we're going to annex parts of the West Bank or not is just a ploy for negotiations, or it's actually going to take place. But here, at least on this map, Israel's finance minister is urging full sovereignty over 82% of Judea and Samaria. And here you see some of these areas like Ramallah, Jericho, Hebron. These are presumably going to remain under some kind of Palestinian control. But considerable bulk of the West Bank, i.e. Judea and Samaria, that's going to be absorbed by Israel in some way. Yeah. And it's not as though other powers in the region aren't having to respond to this. So, from our next story, open source Intel Defender. Of course, this is the picture from 5 years ago when the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain joined the Abraham Accords. The United Arab Emirates has told the Trump administration that Israeli plans to annex large portions of the West Bank would harm the Abraham Accords and likely end any chance of expanding them to other countries in the region, such as Jordan and Saudi Arabia, according to 2 sources with knowledge of the matter who spoke with Axios. The Emiratis have made clear in private and in public they see annexation of parts of the West Bank as a red line for relations between Israel and the UAE. These plans, if carried out, will do substantial damage to the UAE-Israel relationship, and they will irreparably damage whatever remains of the vision of regional integration. In many ways, the choice before Israel right now is annexation or integration, a senior Emirati official told Axios. Okay, this is where we know that things, of course, the Israel-Gaza situation, Israel-West Bank, they change constantly, okay? I mean, a couple of months ago, we're talking about how, hey, maybe Syria will join the Abraham Accords. Maybe Azerbaijan will join the Abraham Accords. Who knows? Who else could join the Abraham Accords, right? And in this kind of an environment where people wonder, who can solve the Israel-Gaza, Israel-Palestinian, Israel-West Bank, situation? Is Trump going to be able to solve it? This is where you see a huge amount of speculation regarding the beast, right? The anti-Messiah, Antichrist. The only person who can solve this will be that guy, the man of lawlessness. That's where you get a lot of the speculation. Now, it's not, of course, required that the anti-Messiah or Antichrist solve, at least in a preliminary sense, some of this problem. But, it was a big deal 5 years ago when a moderate Islamic country like the United Arab Emirates normalized relations with the state of Israel. And now they're saying, if Israel proceeds to annex huge parts of the West Bank, that relationship is in serious jeopardy, much less getting other countries on board with the Abraham Accords. So, yeah, we just have to take note of these things. Yes, we pray for peace because ultimately what it does come down to is human lives. But we got to be aware of this. Okay, so here's an interesting post. This is from Aditya Raj Kaul, Senior Executive Editor, NDTV, Geopolitics, National Security, and Strategic Affairs. Appears to be a Pakistani. Pretty sure of that. Anyway, Russian President Putin. This is what we need to be paying attention to. And there's a 1-minute 8 clip here. Everyone has equal rights in this multipolar world. There are economic giants like India or China, but it doesn't mean that anyone should dominate global politics or security. We don't believe there should be some domination. Everyone must be equal. And of course, what has happened, and a lot of countries, of course, are affected by this. What many people are taking note of from the giant parade in Beijing with Xi Jinping, and on his right hand was Vladimir Putin, and on his left hand was Kim Jong-un. And then, of course, you also had the Prime Minister of Pakistan. You had some other leaders there. You've got an Eastern Bloc seemingly forming. And, of course, you've got a Western Bloc, mainly European Union and North America. They want some kind of balance of power more than anything else. We're all equal, okay? I understand that, we don't live in a bipolar world, Washington and Moscow anymore, but how is this going to affect, different things? I mean, that's what a lot of people are having to sort through. People who are not religious, they don't have a biblical worldview. They recognize that in the global south, that is where the population is, unlike Europe, North America. These are areas which are speeding up their industrialization. Europe and America is kind of winding down its industrialization, becoming much more of a service-based economy. What are we going to do? Okay, so Russia, Ukraine. We got a number of stories about that. September the 3rd, so this is yesterday, 41-second clip here. Open source Intel defender, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Paris alongside Finland's President Alexander Stubb for tomorrow's meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, which will be virtually attended by U.S. President Donald J. Trump. And I took notice of this because the President Trump is going to, or he's by now, he attended virtually. Why isn't President Trump there in person? Does he have other things going on? Apparently, there is some big gathering at the White House this evening with a lot of tech giants. But if you're not attending something like this in person, it might signal, I'm saying, that you don't expect that much to come from Russia, Ukraine at the moment. But we do continue to pray for peace. I do understand the President of the United States can't be all places at all times. Okay, from open source intel to the Middle East, Prime Minister's office responds to Hamas. Regrettably, this is yet another baseless spin by Hamas, offering nothing new. The war can end immediately under the conditions set by the cabinet. Number 1, release of all hostages. Number 2, disarmament of Hamas. Number 3, demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. Number 4, Israeli security control over the Gaza Strip. Number 5, establishment of an alternative civilian administration that does not promote terrorism, does not engage in terrorism, and does not threaten Israel. Only these conditions will prevent Hamas from rearming and repeating the October 7 massacre as they have repeatedly vowed to do. Okay. And yes, I don't know a Messianic congregation or synagogue where the safety of Israel, the return of the hostages, is not being prayed for every Shabbat. But this year, especially with the different UN General Assembly gatherings occurring simultaneously to the fall high holidays, our attention should be peaked. Now, I don't want to go into the realm of prophecy speculation and date setting, but the countries of the world have grown impatient with the state of Israel and what it's doing in Gaza. So, yeah, I mean, I keep saying we've got the Russia-Ukraine situation and we've got Israel-Gaza. So certainly for the Trump administration, these are the two really big puzzles it has to hopefully solve for us. We'll see. I'm not as optimistic as other people might have been. From open source intel, September the 3rd, Secretary of State Rubio has signaled in private meetings that he doesn't oppose West Bank annexations and that the Trump administration won't stand in the way, according to Axios, citing 2 Israeli officials. Okay, so yeah. And of course, what would that do to Israel's relations with some of its neighbors in the Abraham Accords, which the Trump administration has put so much time and effort into? The news cycle changes day to day. Okay, so here's something I thought worthwhile to pass along from the channel on X. Call to activism. And of course, it's labeled itself as one of the most viewed progressive platforms on earth. So according to them, Donald Trump has shattered 50 years of U.S. foreign policy, and the world is now more dangerous than ever. It's official. Trump has pushed Russia, North Korea, and even India, the largest democracy on earth, into China's arms. Today, for the world to see, Putin and Kim Jong-un are the main guests at Xi Jinping's massive military parade in Beijing, marking the 80th anniversary of World War II by displaying China's rising dominance. This is a geopolitical nightmare. The world's biggest nuclear powers are aligning against us. America's alliances are collapsing. And according to this opinion, Trump isn't just reckless, he's isolating the U.S. and helping create a new axis of power designed to challenge our economy, our security, and our survival. Okay, now everyone is open to their opinion, and indeed, we're going to see in a moment that that kind of position is not limited to those on the political or progressive left. From Newsmax, September the 3rd, Instagram, Trump warns Hamas, give back all 20 hostages. All right, now here's a clip switching over to the religious world, and this is not the only story involved with this, but this was recently posted by John Rich, the country singer, and he goes after Joel Osteen, among others, talks about, why does he never discuss prophecy? He does rightfully, I think, go after the pre-trib rapture. He says, why are fat, lazy Americans deserving of the pre-trib rapture when you've got Christians in other countries, China, Syria, among other places? They are brutally killed and murdered. And what are different Christian people going to do should they find themselves in the end times without a pre-trib rapture escape? So this is, of course, something which is very thought-provoking, of course, so expect to see it circulate on different platforms. I would like to know, and of course, I don't get my theology from country music singers, entertainers, athletes, whomever, because last year, a clip of John Rich circulating that the Zionist bankers funded the Schofield Reference Bible, which then gave rise to Christian Zionism, that was circulating. So I don't know what John Rich specifically believes about his theology of Israel and the end times and where the Messiah is returning to. I don't know about any of that. Maybe he'll talk about it and we'll see something in the near future. But this is going to get a lot of circulation, and indeed, even my charisma talked about it. So we'll cover that in just a few moments. All right, so here we have one big breaking news. Finland President Alex Stubb warns Trump. He said, if Europe and America don't adopt a more cooperative foreign policy toward the global South and India, then we will lose. The SCO meeting in China is a reminder that the West stands to lose if it fails to build meaningful ties with emerging powers like India, he said. Okay, and here you actually have a clip from the X channel India War Monitor, 34 seconds, where he says this. So, America will lose if India is not with us, warns Finland's President Alex Stubb. And of course, just fast forward. And of course, this isn't something which happens overnight. It doesn't happen instantly. But just fast forward 10 years or 15 years. We saw the SCO meeting right before the big giant military parade. It's clear that there is an Eastern Bloc in the world. China, India, even Russia. Yes, they've got their own agendas and their own disagreements, but some of them are definitely united in what? They despise Europe. They despise North America. And so, India is kind of viewed as this pivot point because it is the world's largest democracy. Yes, there was the British colonization period. That was over almost 80 years ago, 78 years ago. But still, India has had relations with both the East and the West, and what is going to happen? We'll wait and see. Now, along with that, Charisma had an article yesterday, September the 3rd, and here we see Antichrist arising. Putin, Kim, and Xi discuss how to achieve immortality. And this article actually dealt more with the issue of and this was picked up by a number of other venues, but it had to do with organ transplants, help people perhaps even achieve immortality. This is, of course, rather disturbing, but Putin replied with the development of biotechnology, human organs can be continuously transplanted, and you people can live younger and younger and even achieve immortality. Okay, whether any of that is true, accurate, or not isn't the point. People are paying attention to the shift toward the East. And no, I don't believe Putin, Kim, or Xi are the beast, but I definitely know that if Western civilization doesn't get on top of its game, we're going to be living in a different world in the next 10 to 20 years. That is a reality. All right, so speaking of that, let's shift back to the American home front from Charlie Kirk, September the 3rd. You hear a lot of pundits fearmonger about the rise of Christian nationalism when right in front of their eyes, Islam is taking over public places and gaining political power. Islam is a fundamentally political ideology that aims to conquer us militarily or demographically. Okay, those are his observations, and it is not a surprise why, in view of that, something like Christian nationalism would arise. We need a Christian society. But how much of this is actually spurring on? We got a lot of Muslims coming into Europe, coming into North America. Ultimately, the only answer to this, the only answer to any of this, but the only answer to this specific issue is what? Salvation in Jesus, salvation in Yeshua. And how do we present our Islamic neighbors who have come in with that message of Yeshua, Jesus, salvation, which Islam doesn't particularly offer? And of course, this is an ongoing issue for certain among evangelicals. Recently I just ordered a big package of different English translations of the Quran. I got a copy of the study Quran, so it's like a study Bible, only it's the Quran. I haven't really looked at a lot of it that much. There's even a publication Zondervan released a number of years ago, a translation of the Quran with Christian commentary. So I added these resources to my library. I don't know if I'm going to use them anytime soon, but like a lot of people, especially in metropolitan areas, we're seeing the Islamic population increase. And at least in passing, we want to know, okay, what are some of their religious beliefs? How do we approach them? How do we best communicate with them? No, I don't think that all these people are terrorists and they want to do this or do that. I think many of them are wanting to come to a place like the United States for a better quality of life. But their arrival means that Western society is going to go through some dynamic shifts. So how do we approach these things? It's an ongoing part of our apologetics discussion. All right, here's a story which made me very, very angry, posted from Vivid. I'm sure some of you all have seen this as well. There's a 27-second clip. I can't believe my eyes. The government building in Scotland has decided to raise the Palestinian flag at full mast and officially announced that they are cutting trade ties with Israel. They've gone fully terror supporting now, sickening. So guess what? I see something like this. I'm a McKee, of course. I am of Scottish ancestry. I'm actually of Scottish, English, and German ancestry, but no, I identify as a Scottish American, and I'm like, my ancestral home country, this was a major place during the Protestant Reformation. Even if you're not a Calvinist, you recognize that Scotland's role in the Protestant Reformation was absolutely vital. But it was also vital to the colonization of North America. It was also vital to things like the American Revolution, also vital to our Western way of life, freedom of speech, education, the need for everyone to be able to read and write, innovation, technology, philosophy. But yeah, you see something like this and you're like, well, we've been here since 1767. So, there are a lot of places here in North America which are a lot more Scottish than what Scotland has now become. And I know that others of you, you may not be Scottish American like I am. You may be from another nationality, but you're like, wow, I mean, this is what happens when you raise a generation without God, without the Bible. Not saying that the situation between Israel and Gaza is a problem, because it is. But yeah, this is just really offensive to me. Okay, so to the Russia-Ukraine situation, Visegrad 24, world leaders arrive at the Elysee Palace for the Coalition of the Willing meeting. And here you have a number of the leaders who have appeared. Others will join via video with a call to Trump also planned. Now, this meeting is by now over. And among the things which have come from it, from open source intel, the UK government announced that members of the Coalition of the Willing are ready to provide long-range missiles to Ukraine. Okay, whether that's good or bad remains to be seen. Of course, this is something which we just take note of. Visegrad 24, not the only venue reporting this, but this was the first one I had on my feed. Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91. Okay. I guess because I'm 6'6", I've never worn anything which is Armani. But definitely have seen people wear Armani in the past. And some of his designs are unique, to say the least. Hey, we'll see. I mean, fashion is something that changes from year to year, decade to decade. Open source intel defender. This is from this morning, September the 4th. During today's call between U.S. President Donald J. Trump and European leaders, part of the Coalition of the Willing in Ukraine, Trump stated that countries in Europe, specifically Hungary and Slovakia, must immediately stop any further purchase of Russian oil products, while stressing the need for increased economic pressure on China for their continued support of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, according to senior officials with the White House. Along with that, from Visegrad 24, September the 4th, breaking, in today's phone call with the Europeans and Zelensky, Trump told the Europeans to stop buying oil from Russia and to put sanctions on China for enabling the Russian war machine in Ukraine, according to a White House source speaking to Reuters. All right, so at least we know this. If countries like Slovakia, Hungary are being called out, stop buying Russian oil and gas, well, what are some of the other places they can get oil and gas? The United States of America, of course. But here, this is a conflict which doesn't just involve Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. You know, China is going to be pressured. Of course, India is probably also going to be pressured as well. Don't do business with Russia or we'll penalize you. We're seeing definitely a shift of the balance of power in the world, but we know at the same time the Lord is in control and his people wherever they are, because the Lord has his people in both Ukraine and Russia and China and India and Western Europe and the United States of America and all over. We are the ones who have to pray for peace. We are the ones who have to pray for the killing to stop. And for a lot of these world leaders to, as impossible as it may seem, to have an encounter with the risen Lord. Now, from open source intel, September the 4th, China is prepared to cooperate with Russia to build a fairer global governance system. And the commentary is new axis forming. Yeah. Visegrad 24, this presumably was at the end of the meeting in Paris. So September the 4th, President Macron, as of today, 26 countries are ready to send troops to Ukraine or support them. Emmanuel Macron said that today, 26 countries have formally agreed to either send troops to Ukraine or provide certain resources to support coalition forces in ensuring security at sea or in the air. Macron said that the goal of the forces is to guarantee peace and send a strategic signal to prevent the resumption of fighting. Okay, I mean, these are proposals, and what are the Russians going to think about this? Troops in Ukraine? Yeah, I honestly don't see how this is going to end well for any of the parties concerned. All right, you remember the John Rich quote I referred to a few moments ago. So My Charisma did an article on this. John Rich reveals why Joel Osteen avoids preaching about the end times. So this discusses a number of the things. Rich began by explaining the origins of the modern concept of the rapture, referencing preacher John Darby. Rich highlighted how dispensationalist teachings have shaped modern Christian expectations. According to this doctrine, true Christians will be taken from the earth before God's wrath descends in full, a concept reinforced later by theologians such as Schofield. However, Rich argues that these teachings may leave many Christians unprepared for the harsh realities described in Scripture. Read Matthew 24, he urges. Now, scrolling down just a bit, Rich contrasts these biblical truths with modern American preaching. A little more further down, persecution around the world points directly to the reality of Rich's argument. Why don't you go tell that, i.e. a pre-trib rapture escape, to the underground Christians in communist China right now who are being killed by the thousands? Why don't you go tell that to the Christians in Syria right now who are being chopped up into pieces on the streets? He asks. Rich emphasizes that American Christians often lack the perspective of those who risk their lives daily for their faith. And here also discusses AI and a number of other, really, terrifying matters if you really sort through that. Indeed, a lot of people in America and the West right now, I mean, look at some of the way church is done. How many churches, although actually Joel Osteen's church, Lakewood Church, is a lot better, but how many of them are just some big giant rock concert now? That does not promote any sense of sanctity, reverence, or holiness in one's approach toward God. And it's when you have a sense of sanctity, reverence, and holiness toward God that you're able to actually weigh some of the difficult realities of human living. Whether that takes place in a church service, whether that takes place in one's home, or out there on the street, whatever. People are going to talk about the end times. People are going to talk about different scenarios. And even though I don't fully know all of the perspectives of John Rich regarding Israel and Zionism and what have you, his statements are going to get traction because he's a celebrity. Some people are going to reevaluate the popular pre-trib rapture as a result, as is indicated by Charisma picking this story up. Okay, so we got two more stories from Open Source Intel. This is September the 4th, 11:30 a.m. So right as we're getting prepared to get our episode for the day ready. IDF spokesperson, our forces are operating within Gaza City. We currently control 40% of the city's territory. And finally, back to the Russia-Ukraine situation from Open Source Intel today, 10:49 a.m. Open Source Intel Defender, following today's meeting, both in person and virtual, of the Coalition of the Willing in Paris, 26 countries have repeatedly agreed to provide security guarantees to Ukraine, including Australia, Canada, Free Europe, Japan, New Zealand, and the United States. Okay, so whatever that security guarantees means. And indeed, one of the things which I know people in the political world have speculated, because a country like India tries to be unaligned. They have, of course, relations with the East. They have relations with Russia, and they have relations with the West. Can a country like India actually be used to help facilitate some kind of final peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine? So that's why I know a lot of people are ticked off about what Trump has apparently done in pushing India into the Eastern Bloc, the Eastern sphere of influence, because we kind of need a country like India right now to help with the Russia-Ukraine peace process. But we know, because it's the nature of our world, that the news cycle changes from day to day. And once again, pray for peace, Israel, Gaza, the Middle East. Number 2, pray for peace, Russia, Ukraine. Number 3, we've got situations here on the American home front which are unfolding. We're probably going to see them unfold September, October. A lot of people are asking questions. A lot of people need us as men and women of faith to be voices which can calm them down, to offer them solace, to keep them grounded, because this is a time where stability, whether it's doctrinal stability or just stability regarding the world, it is a virtue which is absolutely priceless. And while everyone's situation is different, everyone's disposition in the Messianic community, a congregation, synagogue, fellowship, whatever, we need stability as best as we can, especially with the fall high holidays coming up. As always, on behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and support for all of our ministry efforts. I encourage you, if you have not done so, to check out our website, messianicapologetics.net, access a number of the free articles, frequently asked questions entries, back issues of Outreach Israel News. You can also look at back episodes, Messianic Insider, McKee Moment Shorts, and look at some of our other adventures and activities over the years. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.